Avatar: The Last Airbender is a show about a lot of things. It's a show about forgiveness and sacrifice and personal growth. It's a show about Eastern philosophy, about the aftermath of war, about the conflict between personal desire and what is best for the world at large. It is not primarily or even secondarily a show about romance, but nonetheless, 15 years after the show's release, fans continue arguing about the two most intriguing pairings. One of these is the canon pairing of Aang and Katara, while the other is probably the most popular fan pairing, that being Zuko and Katara. And based on how my Avatar videos have done since the series was released to Netflix, particularly my Zutara-related videos, it appears as though this debate is going to continue raging for a long time to come, for as long as Avatar remains popular. So I would like to break down why I believe this debate is still raging. Is it just because Zutara is a more dramatically interesting pairing, and fans are upset it didn't happen? Well, speaking as a Zutara partisan, that's part of it, but it's not the whole picture. The gulf between Zutara fans and Kataang fans is really about how we relate to stories and what we expect from them. This is a divide that is only growing larger with time, so I think it is worth addressing it through the prism of the Zutara versus Kataang debates that we're all used to. All of us, that is, except for you new fans. If you're new to the Avatar fandom, well, first and foremost, I welcome you. I hope you enjoy it here. Compared to other fandoms, it's quite considerate and caring. But if you spend enough time here, you're bound to be caught up in one of the Zutara versus Kataang debates. They're an inextricable part of the fandom. Even though, again, romance is not the main focus of Avatar. There are two major reasons why this divide has become so great, and I will detail them here. Number one, the divide over what a relationship should be in fiction. Now, this seems obvious. What is shipping about if it's not about which relationship the audience finds appealing? But what I mean is that the divide between Zutara and Kataang speaks to a larger, more systematic divide between two different archetypes. A significant portion of relationships in fiction fall into one of these two archetypes. Superficially, Aang represents a vision of romance that is sweet and nice, but rather safe and predictable, while Zuko represents a vision of romance that is mysterious and appealing, but also dangerous and maybe unhealthy. I would argue that these two archetypes do not define Zuko and Aang particularly well, especially as the series goes along. But these two archetypes do exist, and they are a major dividing line, and I do not blame casual fans for dividing Aang and Zuko into these two archetypes. The vision the show is trying to promote is that the relationship between Katara and Aang is healthier than a romantic relationship between Zuko and Katara would be. And while I do not quite believe in that, as Katara and Zuko understand each other a lot more than the typical bad boy in the role that Zuko fills here. Still, I do not have anything against people sorting Zuko into this kind of bad boy box, especially on first impression. There's also the question of perspective. From whose point of view are you examining these relationships? If you're examining it from Aang's point of view, if Aang is the character you most closely relate with, then it would be natural for you to support the pairing of Aang and Katara, as Aang wants nothing more than this pairing. He's obsessed with Katara from the moment he meets her, and this obsession pays off, as by the end of the show, the relationship has happened because of Aang's persistence. However, if you identify more with Katara, then you may not have the same perspective as those who identify more with Aang, and your judgment about these two relationships depends on which you think best benefits Katara. There are those who say that Aang's gentleness and the degree to which he cares about Katara make him a better partner for her than Zuko, as the two of them started off as enemies before becoming friends, and the early interactions between them are genuinely uncomfortable. Then there are those who prefer Zutara for the same reasons. They like that sense of danger and the adventure it evokes. However, there are a second group of Zutara fans, and I would consider myself part of this group, who like the relationship because we like how Zuko's perspective on Katara shifts throughout the show. No, he did not really respect her when they first met, but he grew to care about her when she showed empathy for him when no one else did. And even though he betrayed her at the end of Season 2, he grew to deeply regret that mistake. And even after all the rest of Team Avatar accepts him, he still yearns for Katara's approval. He really cares about what she thinks of him. We also argue that Zuko better understood the trauma Katara had endured, the darkness inside her, and her inability to just move past what had happened, especially compared to the more upbeat and childish Aang. Obviously, there are those who disagree with this point of view, including the showrunners themselves, which leads us to the second major gulf. Division number 2. To what degree does canon matter? I've always found canon to be such a strange and heightened word to be dragged into fandom debates. It comes from a Greek word meaning law. That word passed into Latin, and like the rest of the Latin language, it stayed alive even after the fall of the Roman Empire because of the Catholic Church. It came to refer to church doctrine, both in general and in regards to which biblical books are to be considered legitimate, as opposed to which are to be considered apocryphal. This is how it came to be transferred into the terms of the debate over which of a collection of works are to be considered official. You're looking at, say, the Shakespeare canon, then your task is fairly straightforward, if not easy. You just have to look at all the works attributed to Shakespeare and consider which of them are actually from Shakespeare. However, if you're considering a franchise, this becomes significantly more difficult. It's easy to say that everything the author writes is canon and nothing else, but what if the author is dead? And how does that extend to other mediums? Obviously, the Lord of the Rings books are canon to that series, but what about the movies? What about the rest of Tolkien's Legendarium that was published after his death? Now, the way a lot of people get around this is that they just say that everything that is officially licensed is canon, while everything else is not. For example, Zutara did not happen at the end of Avatar, so it is not considered canon, whereas Kataang did, so that is canon. But I still have a problem with this, as it still necessitates the existence of a centralized authority determining what is canon and what isn't, and personally I find the debate to be kind of ridiculous anyway. So I am glad that with the overabundance of fanfiction we have these days, the glimmer and radiance of canon has dimmed a bit. It's become a little less important. I've never been comfortable with how we talk about fandom in almost religious language, right down to the author's words about their own show being considered word of God. Pop culture is not a religion, even if some people treat it as such, and it wouldn't even be a good thing if it was. The pressure to support the canon pairing versus the freedom to support your own pairing plays itself out in the Zutara versus Kataang debates. As time has progressed, it feels like the pressure to support that which is canon has died down a bit, and for this I am glad. There shouldn't just be one definitive version of the Zuko and Katara and Aang story, just like there isn't one definitive version of Greek myths or superhero comics. While I do have problems with a lot of fanfiction, much of it has to do with that almost all of it is terrible, and if not terrible, at least not as good as the original work. I have no problems with it philosophically or ethically. Whatever your stance on the Kataang versus Zutara debate, it should be determined by examining the relationships and thinking about which of them really works, not just about which one actually happened in the show itself. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. Go back and watch Avatar. It's easier than ever now that it's on Netflix, and it really is a fantastic and enthralling show. It is rightfully considered as one of the best works of television in the 21st century, animated or otherwise. It deserves all the credit it gets and a lot more. Anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. Promise you that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.